Welcome, everybody. Let's get started. Being part of the Fairfax family, what you need to know once your baby is born. The welcome here. These are your presenters, myself, Suzanne Seitz. I am a certified genetic counselor. I've been with the Cryobank for almost 30 years. Christy Burke, who is our Assistant Director of Client Services, she'll be helping out with the Q&A at the end. Christina Garcia, she coordinates our ID donor connections with adult offspring, and she's also available for the Q&A. And our moderator for questions is Morgan Barker, our Senior Marketing Manager. So let's go over what we wanted to talk about today. The presentation will last about 30 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. And you can add your questions into the dashboard, and we'll get to them in that last 30 minutes of the webinar. And if we can't get to all of them, we'll write up responses and put them on our blog. The presentation today is being recorded, and everyone who registered will get a link to it shortly afterwards. We'll also post it on our blog page so you can refer to it later or share it with friends and family. This is what we plan to present today. We'll talk about reporting your pregnancies and births and why it's important, how we limit the number of families the donors can create. We'll talk about the information on the donor's medical status and what it means when it changes. Also, our unique program of showing updates donors provide to us so that you can access them 24/7. We'll also let you know what it means to be an ID donor and how those who are donor-conceived adults can connect with their donors. There's lots of family resources you'll want to review and see if there's something there that could be helpful as you navigate parenthood. And at the end, again, we'll have about 30 minutes of Q&A. We want you to take a poll, just so before we get started, to see who's in our audience. So the questions that you're seeing are, what does your Fairfax family look like? The first one is, I'm hoping to have a child in the near future, or I have a child already with a sperm donor, or I have more than one child with a sperm donor. So 77% of you are hoping to have a child in the near future. So a lot of this information will be useful to you as you plan your family. That's terrific. 24% of you already have one child with a sperm donor, and 3% of you have one child with a sperm donor. That's terrific. So now I know who we're talking to today. That's great. So let's talk about pregnancy reporting. It's very, very important that you let us know when you conceive. You can report this to us via an online reporting form. You'll need the order number provided at the time that your vials were purchased, so hold on to that. That's very important to have that order number. That connects you to the specific donor in our database. This will also allow us to link all the specific fields together. If you don't have that order number, you can chat or email or call us and we can provide that to you. You'll need your donor number, the vial type that you used to conceive the pregnancy, your due date, the state you live in, and your email address, and preferably the one that you've got connected to your Fairfax Cryobank account. Once you deliver, we want an update. So if you could get back into that form and fill it out again with, again, that same information, order number, donor number, vial type, now your child's birth date, the state, and email address. And if it's easier for you, you can always just give us a call and we'll take that information through our client services department. So this is why the pregnancy reporting is so important. We want to limit the number of families our donors create. For Fairfax families, we limit it to 25 in the US and an additional 15 abroad. PRS, which is a sperm bank that we just recently folded into the Fairfax family, has a limit of 15 to 20. And it's important to define what a family is. There could be more than one child per family. We also Our clients are single women, they're hetero couples, or they could be same-sex couples who each have a child by the same donor. And we rely on your pregnancy reporting to help keep track of these family numbers. So what happens once a donor reaches his limit? The donor can no longer be sold to new clients, but there could be vials available, and they could only be sold to families who have already had a birth reported. It's fairly rare for a donor to actually reach his limit. Okay. If you're planning future children, it is always best to buy a few extra vials to have just in case the donor sells out. If a donor does sell out, then getting a donor to come back and donate again is actually quite complicated and expensive. So we encourage you to think ahead and plan ahead. If there are vials left in your storage account after you've completed your family, Fairfax Cryobank will buy back those vials if they're unused and they've obviously been here at our storage facility for 50% of the purchase price. And there's no time limit. So if you complete your family 5 years from now, we will still buy those vials back from you. Donors do sell out fairly quickly and often have sold out between pregnancy 1 and pregnancy 2. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind as you plan your family. We want you to visit your donor page regularly. So once you pick that donor who's going to be the donor for your child, there are several things that you want to check back with us on and see if there have been any changes or updates. The first thing I want to talk about is the donor medical status and how that changes over time, what our annual update process is like and how you can access that, and if you perchance want to see if a donor has availability, how you would check for that. So if a donor is no longer on the active search where he's actively selling vials, you can find him. You can always find donors, even donors that were sold 20 years ago, by going to the search by ID and putting in that donor number there. So that brings you up to the donor page. And at the top, you'll see his donor number and the donor category, ID, ID graduate, non-ID, and it'll give you the availability or the status there. And there are 4 different statuses that you might see on your donor page. Active means that he still has vials available for sale, so he is now being presented to any client who's looking for a donor. And anyone who's now looking at donors to purchase vial is seeing our active donor list. Once a donor sells out of vials, he becomes inactive. We no longer expect vials to release from this donor. He has sold out. So we call that status inactive. Rarely, an inactive donor may have a vial that is returned to inventory because perhaps someone who had a stored vial has returned it to us, like I was explaining to you earlier, and we may have 1 or 2 or 3 vials that are returned, and he may have some availability. For this 4th category investigation, if there is a medical issue reported, we will place the donor in investigation while we determine if this indeed increases the risk for other children from this donor. So investigation status is meant to be a temporary status until we determine that risk. If we determine that there is a risk for other children, we will move the donor to restriction status. And that risk is often very small, but it is something that we want to have plainly visible so that when you visit that donor page, you can see what the donor status is. So if there is a restriction, you don't need to worry that you're going to be in the dark about it, because what we plan to do is notify all families who have purchased that donor, even the ones that have not reported a pregnancy. Clinics are also notified, and we do post the information about why the restriction occurred in the donor summary profile, and I'll show you how to access that in the next slide, 24/7, so you can see what that medical issue is. Usually these increased risks are exceptionally small. We may have a risk in the general population that's 1%, and with the occurrence of 1 child, with this issue, the risk may go up to 1.5 or 2%. So we're not typically talking about high-risk situations, but we certainly want to be very transparent and make sure you can access that information. It's also very important for you, even after you've purchased your vials and moved on to create your family, to keep us updated with your current contact information. I am the one who sends out those notifications, and I really want to make sure you get it. So if your email has changed or your home address has changed, that's very important. Primarily, email is our mode of communication that protects your privacy the most. So that's the contact information we want to make sure is always updated. Now, let me show you how to get into the summary profile. This is the one part of the donor profile package that we have that could change over time. Other than the statuses that I mentioned, the summary profile is where we will post any new or changing information. If you go to a donor's page, you'll see his list of items there on the right: summary profile, staff impression, donor essay. The staff impression down, all those items listed below that do not change, but the summary profile could change over time. You will then click on that as a downloadable product, and then you'll see at the top to the far right this section called Update to Profile. That allows you to see any changes or information that has come up. Once a year, we reach out to all of our donors and we ask for an update. We do this by email. They have a very easy, simple online portal that they use to update this information. They see what they presented in the past, and we ask them if there have been any changes. We ask about their health, their personal health, the health of donor family members, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and any personal updates they may have. That might be something like a job change or a completed degree. If the donor has any children of his own, those will be presented in there. And here's an example of an update, and you can see that over a series of about 8 years, we've had constant updates. He's told us about a job change. He's indicated that in his own personal health, there have been no changes. And then as far as family members, we see what's happened with a number of the grandparents. So that is information that is fluid and is being put on there after it's being reviewed so that you can access it. Now, this is a service that Fairfax Cryobank provides, and as far as we know, we are the only sperm bank that offers this instant access. All you need to do is know your donor number, and you will be able to see this information at no cost. There's no firewall or barrier there. You can access that information. And if there's been a medical issue that I mentioned earlier, we would put that in here so that you would be able to see that there as well. Another thing that you can see on the donor page is the vial availability. So even if a donor is inactive, you may see that there are a few vials still there. And we have different icons there for, check mark means that we have vials that can be ordered. There's a larger volume. The call setting means that you need to give us a call in order to place that. And if there is no availability, all of those fields will be blank. So it would allow you to see if there are additional vials to purchase. That might be something important to monitor after you've ordered your first round of vials, what that availability is as you decide if you need to purchase more vials for a future child. Okay, now I wanted to talk about the ID program. We have ID donors and non-ID donors, and we have them from 3 trusted sperm banks together in one. Fairfax Cryobank was started in 1984, and we have been part of the Genetics and IVF Institute, which is a world-class facility that integrates infertility and genetic testing. And access to that expertise in genetic testing and infertility has allowed us to provide our unique services. Since that time, we've added 2 other sperm banks to our family: cryogenic laboratories Cryogenic Laboratory, joined us in 2003 after nearly 25 years of service. Pacific Coast Reproductive Services joined us more recently in 2016 and has been serving families since 1984. All of our sperm banks offer both non-ID and ID donors. So what is an ID donor? ID donors are willing to be known to their offspring when they reach the age of 18 or older. They are asked this at the time that they sign their contract with us when they become donors, and very clearly we present both options of non-ID and ID. Starting just recently, all of our donors at Fairfax Cryobank, our new donors, will be ID donors. We will release contact information to registered children who are 18 years or older when they request it. But the parents do need to, if they've used an ID donor, do need to complete an identity birth registration form, and you'll need your child's social security number for that. So give it a few weeks after your child is born, complete that form. We will have that on file so that when your child contacts us, when they're 18 or older, we'll be able to verify that information and get that process of connection started. What if a donor changes his mind? For an ID donor, even if they selected to be an ID donor 15 years ago, if they're an ID donor, they cannot change their mind, and we will honor the promise that we made to the families who are using that donor. For non-ID donors, if a non-ID donor wishes to be known to his children, Fairfax Cryobank will share identifying information with adult children when the donor completes the required notarized form. We do ask our donors in their annual updates if they've changed their mind. Or a donor can actually give us a call, and we've had that happen, to say that he would like to be known to his offspring, and so we will make that change for him. When this does happen and we have everything in place, everything's verified, we'll update that summary profile. Again, that's that place you want to keep checking. And this is obviously only applicable to non-ID donors. And we will indicate the month and the year where this transition has happened. The donor has agreed to allow the cryobank to release their identifying information to adult offspring 18 and older who complete the ID donor contact request process. Please contact Fairfax Cryobank for details. This has all happened as a result of a recent California state law that requires that previously anonymous sperm donors do now have the option to consent to release of their identifying information. So if your donor-conceived child has now reached the age of 18 and they have an interest in connecting with their donor, they can contact us. We now have that birth registration form. We have the contract that we know is in place with the donor. We will initiate contact with the donor and ask for his preferred method of contact. Once we have all the information we need at that point, we will provide that donor contact information to the donor-conceived individual. The donors themselves actually are never provided the child's information. So this is just the donor-conceived individual gets the information from us. And the contact that ultimately results from this could be anything from an email to a meeting, but that is something that is mutually decided upon between the parties. And I will tell you that Christina Garcia is on the line. She is coordinating this for Pacific Reproductive Services, and she's been doing this as part of their sperm bank for quite a while. Their children, many children are over the age of 18. I wanted to show you a place on our website that's really worth a visit. It's the resource list. The URL is down there at the bottom of the page. We've collected resources that we think will help you navigate raising a donor-conceived child, how to tell your child that they're donor-conceived. There's some wonderful children's books as well as websites that connect people with similar circumstances, give each other advice. And there are lots of things you can peruse there, especially some of the websites that go to locations where they might have wonderful blog posts or books that are written by people that have gone through similar circumstances. So that's certainly worth a look. One service that we do provide is if you are planning on doing a second parent adoption. So if you have a reported birth, you can reach out to client services. You actually have to give them a call to get this process started. And once we get everything verified, we will create a letter that indicates that the donor releases all his parental rights and provide a copy of the consent that he signed that releases those rights. And so just want you to know that that's a service that we do provide. One thing that's certainly worth mentioning is the value of connecting with other families. Certainly have sibling connections can be incredibly fulfilling as the children grow older. And we offer an opportunity on our Fairfax Family Forum for you to join a private group just for that donor that allows you to meet other families with children from that donor. And this is a place where you can just visit regularly and privately message folks to see if there is a potential for a connection there. We also have other threads on the Fairfax Family Forum that are much more general, and those are places you can go just to talk about what it's like to go through this process. But the Fairfax Family Forum does have these private donor groups, and it allows you to make those connections moving forward. And then when you're ready, perhaps the children can have a chance to meet. I've talked to several families who have found that incredibly rewarding. We also have other Fairfax Cryobank social media that is fun to follow and can give you some great insights and how-tos. So ultimately, the whole purpose of this webinar is to really just say to you, we want to stay in touch. We want you to tell us when you're pregnant, when that baby's born. We want you to know how to check for those donor updates so that you can always know the latest and greatest about your donor. We want you to have an opportunity to meet other families by using our forum connections. And the value there is that we don't let anyone into those private groups unless we know that they have actually purchased that donor and reported a birth. So it is a nice verified group of families that have used that same donor. You can follow us on social media. We have a very active blog and of course our newsletter, which is how many of you probably heard about this webinar. And if you've used an ID donor, hopefully we've given you some information about how to make that connection for your adult child. So we want to get started with the Q&A, but I also wanted to let you know we do have a promo code that's valid until the end of the month called Family Webinar, and you can get a free unlimited access plan, which is, includes the adult photo, right? Yeah, so it includes the adult photo. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us, you can give us a call. We have a chat feature as well, so we are certainly interested in staying in touch. So let's open it up to questions.
We do have a couple of questions. So the first one here is, do you help connect families that want to meet after the birth of baby?
So the way we help families connect after the birth of a baby is through the Fairfax Family Forum. That's the resource that we have for the families to connect. People that have used the same donor or people that have actually just used donor can connect on the forum or through social media or through our Facebook account. There are plenty of places where they can connect, but we don't connect them to the donor, obviously, because we're doing that with our adult children with ID donors only.
Speaking about the forum, someone just came in and said, where do you access the family forum? How can you find it on the website?
So it's on the website from the home page under resources, and there is a link to Fairfax Family Forum. You can also search for it on our homepage and it'll come up. We are getting ready to do a major upgrade for that, which we're excited about, which will make it a much more easier process. These platforms upgrade so quickly. and it's been a few years since we've done an update. And we have one for Fairfax Cryobank and Cryogenic Laboratories, and we're hopeful to have one up for PRS at some point in the future as well.
Another question here, someone wants to know, will there be an increase in sperm donors in the near future? It seems that many of the donors listed are no longer participating or on wait list.
We're always putting new donors up as available, and unfortunately we do have donors that had to kind of slow some donations down during COVID, but I do believe that that is starting to pick up depending on location. So availability should certainly improve. But we're always putting new donors up. We put up, I believe, a dozen donors last month. So it's important just to keep looking because the donors go up frequently.
Here's a question for Christy. It says, I live in the UK. Do you supply to UK fertility clinics? And is the process pretty much the same as if I lived in the USA?
Yes, we definitely can assist you with placing an order to ship to the UK. We ship there frequently. We would recommend that you reach out to our international team, which is me. So you can email me at global@fairfaxcryobank.com. And we can walk you through the process of placing an order. It's a bit different, but not too much. And we can assist you with making sure your donor is eligible to be shipping into the UK and that your doctor is registered. So all international clients listening, please email your questions to global@fairfaxcryobank.com, and I'm happy to assist you.
Someone wants to know, if I don't register my child's birth after they're born, but decide to register them years later, would that be a problem?
No, it's not a problem. We will certainly accept that information whenever you feel comfortable for providing it. And it may be that it wasn't the right time to do that when the child is an infant, but you decide to do it when the child's an adolescent, and that's absolutely fine.
Another question about the pregnancy reporting. Someone says, what if you have a successful pregnancy that you report that does not result in a full-term pregnancy or birth?
Well, that's why we want you to do that second step and report the birth to us. It would still be listed as a pregnancy until it's converted to a birth. So we still want to know, obviously, but definitely stay in touch and let us know what happens.
Someone wants to know, I'm looking to have twin girls. Is that able to be done for me through this program?
The donor sperm is provided, and the chance of male female sperm is 50-50, and those are the odds that we can offer. That's not really a service that we provide on our end in just selling the sperm to you.
Another question we have here, it says, I didn't purchase the donor profile, full audio interview, etc. when I purchased my vials. When my daughter gets older and starts asking these questions, will I be able to purchase at that time?
Yes, you can always access it later, but as I mentioned, those a lot of those donor profile products aren't going to change. So now is the time to download those onto your hard drive, onto your computer. Use the family webinar promo code to get that unlimited access and download everything from your donor that you want to save. And then you'll have that. There is typically a cost to downloading, for instance, the full audio interview, or there's just a cost involved. So now's the time to download it where there's no cost. The summary profile, which is free and can always be accessed online, I would just suggest checking back on that every year because that could change with updates.
Do the donors stay current with their medical status or update any medical change?
When we ask the donors for their annual update, it's very extensive in that we ask them to go over the family history they presented to us on themselves as well as their families. So if the donor has had a recent surgery or a recent illness or has started taking a medication, we ask for that specifically. So we are asking them to let us know if there are any updates, and specifically dividing it into their own medical history, their family's medical history, and any personal updates that they provide. Now, they could present us with an update where the only thing that might change is a job, and that's the only thing that's presented, but we would specifically say no change to profile on a specific month and year, which basically means he's answered the question that there were no changes at that time.
This one might be for Christy. It's about shipping. It says, I was told that the vial is shipped and passed through an x-ray. I was told if the vial is shipped and passed through an x-ray, it's not viable. Can you please explain more on your shipping method?
That's a good question. So with shipping within the U.S., I'm not aware of any issues with x-rays that's happened in the past. Internationally, I know that can be an issue. So if it's an international shipment, maybe this question is coming from international client, we do have do not x-ray stickers on all of our international shipping tanks.
Yes, they clarified, yes, that was international.
Yeah.
Okay, another question here is about the free unlimited access offer today on the webinar. They want to know how long it's good for, I guess, the actual access. And then just to confirm, does the code give you free unlimited access?
So it lasts, you can use the code until September 30th, and once you've logged on and gotten it, it lasts for 90 days. So you'll have it for 90 days.
And then can you clarify what it includes? Someone wants to know.
So it includes all the product downloads that would have a fee, and it would include the adult photos if they are present on that donor. So it's all the donor products.
Lifetime photos are present. Yep.
Yep.
Someone wants to know, how do they access the full audio interview?
So that is a download. Well, it opens and plays on your computer. So you're asking how to download that onto your computer?
Or just how to access it? You go to the donor profile, it should be there on the right side.
Yes, it's listed with everything. There's a clip, there's a donor clip, a short donor clip, a staff impression audio, and then it says full donor audio. And then you will hit a play button, and it will just start to play on your computer and or your phone, and you'll be able to hear that. So it's right there. If he has one. All the donors from the last 20 years have one. So some of our much earlier donors didn't have audio interviews.
Will there be another webinar like this in the future?
We're always coming up with things that we think you all want to hear about. If there's an additional topic that you're interested in, put that into the dashboard, and we'd love to hear if there's an additional topic. This is also going to be available on the blog, so if it's something that you would like to listen to again or share with family or any of your support system that's helping you through this process, that's going to be available for you online. So we probably wouldn't repeat this exact one since we would have it available. But if you have some ideas of topics that you'd like to hear about, we're always interested.
And if you guys have any questions or requests, you can also put them in the questions panel today, and we look through every question and suggestion. If you have additional webinar topics that you would like to go through, we're always open to new ideas. Someone wants to know, does Fairfax accept everyone who wants to donate, or do they screen and deny based off medical history, etc.?
So that's a really, really good question. When someone who wants to be a donor applies, there is quite a rigorous screening process that they have to go through. They do need to provide accurate medical information about themselves and 3 generations of family history: their parents, their grandparents, their brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, and children if they have them. And then once that is reviewed by our genetics team, including our medical director, who's a pediatric geneticist and is a wonderful resource for screening out medical histories that are of concern. Once they pass that obstacle, they then have to go through the semen testing. So there needs to be high quality that not only has a high count, but will freeze and thaw effectively and increase and allow the sperm numbers to stay high. And then there's rigorous testing that they undergo, infectious disease testing that is done at regular intervals during the screening process and while they're a donor. So they have to pass all of that. And from the applications that we get initially, less than 2% make it into the program. So it is actually an incredibly selective process.
If anyone else is interested in learning more about the donor screening process, we do have a full webinar, a full-hour webinar on our Facebook, on the blog, on our videos channel. It's also on our YouTube page with all of the webinar topics. So that's something that you can learn more about as well. Christy, a question for you here. Do you provide confirmation of receipt of birth report? I mailed in my birth report in July, but I'm not sure if it's been received.
Yes. So when you register your child with the ID option birth registration, or excuse me, the ID birth registration form, there's an option on that document where you can choose to have your confirmation emailed or mailed. And then from there, once we verify everything on your account, we will send out a letter to you by either email or mail, depending on what option you chose. It takes a bit of time to process, so it's not an immediate turnaround, but you will get a confirmation from us, as well as we will note your account in our database. So you could always check in with us as well, just to confirm that we've received your form, your account's noted, and if your letter is in process.
And if it's an ID donor that you're reporting a pregnancy on, that isn't enough. That you do need to do that birth registration form in addition. And if you report a pregnancy online, we don't send, you will get a confirmation at the time that you hit the submit button that it's been accepted, but there's no additional email correspondence with you from that point on.
Christy, another question for you. Someone wants to know about our live chat feature on the website. They're saying they're having a hard time understanding if it's up or not. Are there hours for that? How does that work? Can you explain that feature?
Sure. So depending on the day, we will either have a live representative available to answer your questions via chat, or if there's nobody available, a live representative. We have some chat bots on there that can answer some more basic questions. Additionally, if there's nobody available to answer you live, you will be able to leave a message for us and we will respond to you that way. So it's going to depend on how you're responded to, but we definitely will get back to you if we're not available right then.
A person wants to know, they said they bought 2 vials and did 2 IVF and did not have a successful pregnancy. Do we recommend a different donor because they know motility matters?
Well, I would make sure that the IVF center where you were seen has a chance to review all the information and give you their recommendations. We certainly have individuals that may use one donor, did not have a successful pregnancy, and because it's a sperm donor and it's very easy, they can switch. So that is certainly an option, and many people simply, even for emotional reasons, will just switch donors. As far as a medical reason, if the sperm count is at 10 million when it's thawed, that is certainly adequate to produce embryos and a conception. I would just refer that back to your physician and let them give you their recommendations as well.
Christy, another question for you. Someone wants to know, what if you've ordered multiple times with the same donor? Which order number do you use to update a pregnancy or birth?
Well, if you're asking if you're going to be reporting it online, we would want you to use the order number that actually resulted in the pregnancy. If it's for the same donor number and you're not sure, I would recommend to get in touch with our CS team. And that way we can maybe work with you to tell you the dates of the different order numbers, because we want the pregnancy to be reflected on the correct order, if at all possible. So if you're not sure, I would say just contact CS and we'll get it clarified for you. And then we can even assist you with reporting the pregnancy and or birth right over the phone.
I'm getting a couple questions. Someone wants to know, do donors undergo mental health evaluation, and does mental illness such as bipolar disorder automatically disqualify a possible donor from being accepted in Fairfax Cryobank, or are they considered case by case?
So if a donor has a diagnosis of bipolar, schizophrenia, chronic depression, those are things that do disqualify a donor from being in the program. We have been offering, we are doing on donors the PAI, which is a psychological assessment inventory, which is being scored by a psychologist, and donors can be excluded during the screening process from being in the program. So we obviously take that very seriously, and we would exclude a donor if he had a diagnosis. And if it's found out later that there's an issue, you know, we want to be transparent and let everybody know what's going on.
One question here, you count the number of families that get vials, or the ones that report to stop selling from the same donor?
So the way we establish a family is by a reported birth, and we consider a second child in that family still part of that family. So that family would only count as one. So it's not the number of families we sell vials to, it's the number of families that report births.
I don't see many cases of cancer at a donor's family. Do they have to report it, or is it optional?
So when we get the medical history information from the donor, we do ask them to let us know how all their relatives are doing through their grandparents, aunts and uncles, siblings, parents. And if somebody has cancer, we ask them to determine what kind of cancer it is. We do know, as part of our review process, when they're being screened as a donor, that certain types of cancers can cluster in families, and we obviously want to avoid having a donor with that kind of a history. So not only do we want to know if there's cancer, we want to know what kind of cancer, the age of onset, and what the treatment was that occurred with that diagnosis. You know, if somebody is diagnosed with lung cancer, we want to know the age, whether they were lifelong smokers, all that kind of information is important.
It looks like we're running out of questions here. We don't have too many more. One person just submitted one. How do you fact check the donor's health history?
Well, the donor himself goes through a complete physical at the time that he is screening to be a donor, and continues to have physicals throughout his time with us as a donor. So that is a very thorough physical that he has done. We ask him to ask family members for that information, but we do not get medical records on his extended family. So this is information that we are getting firsthand from the donors. So it looks like we have finished up the questions that we have for today. We want to thank you very much for joining us. There's a lot of information here that you might have not thought about while you're selecting a donor that you really need to think about moving forward. Will be important to you and your family. If you have a chance to use that free access code to see the donor information, please do that, and we certainly look forward to hearing from you in the future. Take care, everybody. Thank you.